Obviously, we here at Moto Camp Nerd are big fans of moto camping, but we also recognize that it's not the only type of camping. So let's talk about the big differences, both philosophically and kind of gear-wise, between the three maybe most popular types of camping: car camping, backpacking, and of course, motorcycle camping. All types of camping have basically the same essentials. You're gonna want something to eat, you're gonna want something to drink, you're gonna want some kind of shelter, and you're gonna want something to sleep in. But what that looks like varies wildly depending on what mode of transportation you use to get to the place where you're doing that camping. So let's start with car camping. Car camping is probably the most popular version of camping, probably the thing most people are familiar with. When they think about camping, you probably think about car camping. That's the thing I have probably the most experience with. And the advantages of car camping are you have a lot of space. You can bring a lot of stuff, which means you can bring a lot of luxuries with you. I've camped with people that had queen-size air mattresses that were 2 feet high, upon which they placed sheets and bedding and brought their pillows from home and were insanely comfortable. On a car camping trip, you can bring all kinds of luxuries, the most comfortable possible setup, because weight is not an issue and space isn't really an issue because you have a lot of room in your car. You can bring an entire camp kitchen setup. You can bring a multi-burner gas stove. Some people bring full-size grills, but you can at least bring a compact grill. You don't have to cook on the fire if you don't want to. You can bring extra firewood. That's a huge advantage to car camping. You can bring a full-size cooler or even a refrigerator that runs off of either the car battery or some external battery. Like in my 4Runner camping setup, I have a Jackery battery that runs my DC fridge while I'm camping, and it works great for rallies and stuff. You can bring a ton of luxury items, and you can bring a ton of just-in-case items: extra plates, paper towels, multiple rolls of paper towels, even stuff like extra chairs if you think somebody might join you, or like a river floaty if you're going to be near water, stuff that you're not sure you're going to use, but you can just throw in just in case. You can throw in a whole freestanding canopy setup if you want when you're car camping. You just can't do that kind of thing when you are backpacking or motorcycle camping. So car camping is the most comfortable and the most convenient because you can bring the most stuff with you, and also if you forget anything, you have a car, so you can run to town, you can pick up supplies if you need to, and if it gets bad, if it sucks for some reason, you can just pack up and leave even in the middle of the night. Car camping requires the least commitment because you can bring the most stuff, it'll be the most comfortable. The big con there with car camping is that it takes longer to set up and tear down because you've got a lot of stuff and a lot of big stuff, but you can be very comfortable. Now, the other end of the spectrum, if car camping is the most comfortable and the most carefree because you can bring the most stuff, is backpacking. When you're carrying everything you need to camp on your back, you can take less stuff. I don't think that's like an earth-shattering revelation. You may even skip the air mattress and just go with a light foam pad because it's lighter and less likely to fail on you, so you don't have to worry about having an air mattress that's not inflating and sleeping on the ground. Your tent needs to be much smaller and lighter, or maybe you run no tent at all. Maybe you sleep under the stars, maybe you sleep in a bivy sack, maybe you set up a tarp and you sleep under that, which is less bug protection and less protection from the elements. So that's one con of backpacking, or one thing that makes it more challenging, I should say. Your sleeping bag is probably gonna be lighter. You're not gonna bring a giant, like I have a huge Coleman 19-degree bag that I love. It's very large and easy to roll around inside of, that I take when I'm car camping, but when I'm camping in a more minimalist setup, it's a quilt or it's a much smaller sleeping bag. You gotta be concerned about weight and pack size. You're not gonna be carrying a cooler full of stuff. You're probably gonna take dehydrated meals, non-perishable food, maybe canned food, and you're gonna have less of it because you gotta carry it all on your back the whole time. You have to bring your water with you or bring some way to purify it, unless you're backpacking in a campground, which would be weird. So you're gonna have to on-site procure your water. So you're gonna need a filter, some sort of gravity filter, something like that, or you're gonna have to carry as much as you can with you, and water's heavy. It's like 8 pounds per gallon, which is a lot. The advantage to backpacking is it's way more engaging with nature, right? Because you're in it. You're in it, it's all around you. There's no motor noise to distract you. It's not whizzing by at 60 miles an hour, and you can get to the most interesting places that you can't get to by any other means. And you can get as far away from people as you want. So it's more secluded, more interesting places, but more difficult travel, obviously, when you're backpacking. And you're gonna be a lot less comfortable because your setup is gonna be pretty minimalist. The big cons of backpacking: way less comfortable, you have way less room for error, so you can't bring just-in-case items, and if you're 10 miles up a trail and you've lost your sleeping pad, or you didn't bring a pillow, or you forgot something, you're kind of stuck, you're kind of screwed. There's no ripcord you can pull and either leave or get to town to buy supplies, depending on how far out you are. You don't really have room for luxury or convenience items, and You don't really have room for things like just-in-case items, like an extra sleeping pad or extra socks or even a pillow. A lot of times there's just not even room for a backpacking pillow, and people just sleep on their jackets as pillows. You can't bring like an extra jacket, or you can, but you've got to weigh the extra weight and whether or not you think you're going to use it. It's less room for stuff you're not sure if you're going to use, and it's way more like, I know I'm going to touch every single piece here when you're packing for backpacking camping. Now, moto camping, which is the thing I know a lot more about than backpacking, kind of falls in the middle. So you have a lot of the safety net of car camping, but combined with the sort of minimalist mindset of car camping, because weight is not as much of a concern, but we do have a limited space on our motorcycles, right? So we want things that pack small, but we don't have to go crazy spending the most money to get the most absolutely lightweight items. Like an aluminum fork and a titanium fork take up about the same amount of space. When you're backpacking, the weight of that thing might matter. When you're moto camping, it doesn't matter as much because our bikes carry most of the weight. Starting with backpacking gear is smart because you're generally not going to have the room for the huge car camping setups, but understand that you don't have to buy the most lightweight stuff. Small packing is good, lightweight is good, but not as necessary as it is when you're carrying things on your back. Sometimes that ultralight backpacking gear is overkill for what we do on a motorcycle, and it's not as durable. So you can get something that packs the same size that'll last longer and cost you a little bit less. When you're motorcycle camping, air pads are great because they pack up pretty small and are just as light as a foam pad that you might take backpacking. You want to bring a wider sleeping bag, a bigger sleeping pad, a more comfortable quilt. You have more space for that, and you can carry it a little more easily so you can sleep like a king when you're moto camping. I have a very wide sleeping pad that I wouldn't take if I was backpacking, but on the bike it's worth the extra couple of inches of space. You can bring your pillow. You know, they pack small enough, why not? Why sacrifice that comfort? I actually carry 2 pillows when I'm motorcycle camping. Yeah, bougie. Your tents don't have to be ultralight like they do when you're backpacking, and you can bring one pretty much every time when you're moto camping. Even if it's like a 2-person backpacking tent that's not the smallest packing, it's easy enough to strap something like that to the top of your bag and take it with you. It's the same with a bigger sleeping bag. I like the smaller ones. I like to use quilts these days because they'll go into my luggage, but a bigger one could just strap to the top. Doesn't really add a lot of weight. It's just kind of in the way when you're trying to swing your leg over the bike, but small sacrifice for comfort while you're sleeping. It's easy to carry water with you. I always carry about a gallon when I'm, at least when I'm camping off the grid. That's easy because the bike can handle the weight. I'm not carrying that extra 8 pounds on my back. You can just use a jet boil to do your cooking, but you can also go a little bit bigger. They even make like super collapsible 2-burner stoves. You can do full-on cooking. You can bring actual collapsible dishes like the Sea to Summit stuff that Moto Camp Nerd sells. It's not as minimal. You're not stuck with just dehydrated meals. You can do actual cooking in camp if you're smart about the gear you bring and how you get it there. And you can even use perishable items. You can either freeze stuff or you can go to the grocery store after you set up camp when you're on a motorcycle because you have that vehicle available. Same with like beer and ice. I love to set up camp and then run to town and get some ice in a 6-pack and just leave them in a bag so that the beers stay cold even when it's super hot out. Can't do that when you're backpacking. You can bring more luxury items, like I always bring cigars and sometimes whiskey. And you can get to cooler places than you can in a car. You can get to more remote places, more secluded places on a motorcycle than you can in a car that is probably an off-road motorcycle. And getting there is a hell of a lot more fun regardless. Now, you can't get to as remote places as you can backpacking, obviously, but it's kind of right there in the middle. More fun, more cool places than car camping with motorcycle camping, which is one of the reasons why we enjoy it so much. Big con to motorcycle camping is while you can bring a few luxury items and stay comfortable, you can't bring the kitchen sink. Literally and figuratively. You're limited on space, and every pound you add to that bike makes it handle slightly less well. And if you're doing like a lot of difficult riding to get to where you're going, obviously you still want to minimize the amount of weight you're putting on the bike. So don't hear me saying weight doesn't matter. I'm just saying it matters less than when you're carrying something on your back. I have no qualms about 35 pounds of camping gear on my motorcycle. In fact, I've gone out with as many as 80, which I won't do again, but I definitely wouldn't put that on my back if I were backpacking. And maybe one of the best parts about motorcycle camping is there's a variety of ways to do it. There's really 2 major types of motorcycle camping trips. There's the camp to ride trip, where you're bringing minimal gear and you're just sleeping so that you can sleep on the road and get up and keep riding the next day. And there's the ride to camp trip, where you throw a bunch of stuff on your bike. It's maybe a little bit more overloaded. That's so that you're comfortable in camp when you get there. We had a full video on the difference between those 2 types of trips when you're motorcycle camping, so please check those out. If you're looking for minimalist, small packing gear that's going to last you, check out the full selection of camping gear on motocampnerd.com. motocampnerd.com. Every single piece of gear there is specially selected to meet the needs of motorcycle campers, but that doesn't mean it doesn't also work great if you're camping out of your car and you want to keep things more minimal, or you want to camp out of your car sometimes and off your bike sometimes, or even if you dabble in the world of backpacking, a lot of the gear on the site will work great for you. So please pop over, check out what we have to offer, because Moto Camp Nerd has all the gear you need so you can pack small and camp easy.